Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. Welcome back to the Fertility Dietitian podcast. Today we're having a very real, very important conversation. We're talking about IVF and more specifically, how to know if IVF is truly your best next step, or if you're being rushed into something before your body has been fully understood or investigated. Let me say this really clearly. IVF should almost never be your first step after an infertility diagnosis or unexplained infertility diagnosis. This episode is not anti-IVF at all. IVF is an incredible medical technology. It has helped millions of families build their babies, but IVF should be a tool of last resort, not a default. And what I care about most is your informed consent, you being able to understand the barriers that are getting in between you and your baby, and just learning how to understand your body more, as well as giving you the best possible outcomes, no matter how you end up conceiving. The infertility label is often very misused. So let's start here. You've probably been told that infertility is defined as not getting pregnant after 12 months of trying if you're under 35, or 6 months of trying if you're over 35. But here's the thing. That definition does not tell us why pregnancy hasn't happened. It just tells us that it hasn't happened yet. True infertility, meaning biological impossible, is actually very rare. True infertility looks like absence of ovaries, absence of uterus, bilateral tubal removal, complete azoospermia with no sperm production, or certain genetic or structural conditions. This is rare. Okay, what most couples are labeled with is not true infertility. It's actually subfertility, and this reframe is important. It means when you're subfertile that something is interfering, something is dysregulated, something is missing or is being compensated for, or something feels unsafe to your body. That's a very different conversation. And instead of asking, how fast can I override the body, we should actually be asking, why is the body struggling to support fertility the way it was designed to? Hello, functional medicine. IVF does not fix the root cause. Here's a part that no one says aloud enough. IVF does not improve egg quality. IVF does not improve sperm quality. IVF does not correct inflammation. IVF does not fix immune dysfunction, and actually make a lot of these things worse. IVF does not regulate blood sugar. It does not heal your gut or your uterine infections. It does not correct iron dysregulation. IVF bypasses. It retrieves, it fertilizes, it transfers, but it does not upgrade the biology or work with the signals and symptoms that your body is trying to send us. So if reproductive environment is inflamed, if the mitochondrial function is impaired, if sperm DNA fragmentation is high, if progesterone production is weak, if the immune system is dysregulated, IVF is working against the same terrain. And forcing your body to reproduce when it's not ready, that is a very big waste of money, time, and emotional energy. And I say that with love because I've worked with so many couples that have been through multiple rounds of IVF with so much heartache because they're not getting embryos, or they are getting embryos, but they're failing to transfer. And then they take a step back and they have completely different outcomes if they even have to go back to IVF at all. There can be so much pressure from clinics. I see this all of the time. Couples go in, they get minimal labs or very surface level investigation, and they're told your AMH is low or you're over 35 and it's unexplained. You've tried long enough. IVF is just going to be your best option. And suddenly there's a lot of urgency and fear, and there's a ticking clock that starts. If you're feeling rushed or behind, and if you feel like IVF is being presented as the only option, pause. Tune into your intuition. Your body has been keeping you alive your entire life, and your nervous system is intelligent. That quiet voice saying something feels off, I need more answers. Listen to that. You deserve a much deeper, more thorough investigation. So you might be wondering what should be investigated first. Well, I've got you. If you've been labeled unexplained, that should not be the end of the conversation. It should be the beginning. Here's what I want couples to dig into before jumping on the IVF train. First and foremost, sperm quality. Okay. A single sperm analysis done a year ago or even over 6 months ago that just looked at count. Maybe they looked at morphology and it was meh, labeled as fine. Look back at that analysis. Okay. A semen analysis labeled as normal today would have been considered infertile 50 years ago. Okay, so we need to look at morphology critically. We need to look at DNA fragmentation, which is a much deeper look at the quality of the sperm. We need to look at oxidative stress and mitochondrial health and inflammation markers for the men too, okay? Even if their count is high, even if motility is decent, we want it to be ideal. Okay, takes two to tango, and we want to really improve outcomes all around. Sperm quality matters just as much as egg quality, and sperm can improve dramatically in about 90 days. Okay. And remember, sperm is not only helpful for getting pregnant, but the health of the baby, the health of the pregnancy, and the lifelong health of that future tiny human. All right. So sperm health, a good look at those with special attention to the lab ranges. And I do have more of conversations on sperm health and what specifically to look at in those in earlier episodes that we will link in the show notes. Next, we want to be looking at blood sugar regulation at a cellular level, not just a fasting glucose. We want to be looking at fasting insulin, what's happening with insulin response, which is a HOMA-IR lab calculation. Triglycerides to HDL ratio. We want to look at signs of reactive hypoglycemia. We want to look at mineral status that can be impacting insulin signaling as well. You can have quote unquote normal labs and still have cellular insulin resistance that impacts ovulation quality and sperm health. Okay, so this is a really important one. Is so much energy required when we're talking about follicle maturation and implantation and sperm production and protecting that sperm from damage. And blood sugar plays a really big role in how the energy is being produced and if there's a lot of inflammation around how that energy is being produced. So it's not small. It even plays a really big role in hormone communication. Also, not something that we want to overlook there. And it is always overlooked in a conventional investigation. So the next area to really dive into is iron regulation, and not just a hemoglobin. Hemoglobin isn't really even looking at iron. We want to make sure that you're looking at ferritin, transferrin, serum iron, even CRP. Okay. If you have high ferritin, low transferrin, low serum iron, elevated CRP, this is a pattern I see a lot. That's inflammatory iron sequestration. Low iron, that impairs mitochondrial energy production. These are forms of iron dysregulation that can completely sabotage egg maturation and implantation. So this is not going to be uncovered in your conventional workup, but there's so much we can do about changing it, which is the good news. Okay. Keep asking the questions. Next, we want to make sure that we're looking at overall inflammation and immune system regulation. We want to look at that CRP. We want to look at chronic infections and oral health and gut permeability. We want to look at uterine microbiome also. And we might not need to do all of this all at once, by the way. When I'm talking to prospective clients or a couple that is interested in working with me, and we're chatting about whether it would be a good fit. We're going through all of their history and all of the information that they already have. We're talking about cycle signs and current symptoms also, and then determining what makes the most sense to look at first. Okay, we don't have to do everything all at once because the body is really smart and it's telling us, it's giving us a lot of clues as to where to look. Even if you've been told that you're healthy and that everything is normal, I'm going to find clues. I promise you, we find 2 to 3 barriers, at least at minimum, in every single couple that we evaluate. Over 80% of the couples I work with are unexplained infertility. I did that wonderful, lazy label prior to working with me. Okay. So fertility is a very energy intensive, immune modulated process. And if your immune system is constantly putting out fires, reproduction is not being prioritized. So we can learn about this and learn about how to calm that down to focus resources on reproduction. We also want to learn more about the quality of ovulation, not just whether you are ovulating. Of course, that's super important and we need that to be happening. But you can ovulate every month and still have a weak luteal phase, low progesterone, poor follicular development, poor egg mitochondrial health. Ovulation quality is not binary. It's a spectrum. And progesterone alone, if that's coming in quote unquote normal, ideally we're seeing over a 12 progesterone in the mid-luteal phase, really ideally closer to 20. So we can learn a lot about measuring progesterone in that luteal phase, as well as looking at things like body temperature, PMS symptoms, what's happening with spotting pre-period. Also going to be cluing us in, because you can also be producing adequate progesterone, but not really able to support that lining because of what's happening with things like immune system signaling or other inflammatory markers, or estrogen also has to be balanced with the progesterone piece. So there's a lot to think about when we're thinking about the quality of ovulation and that luteal phase environment. Okay. Next, we want to think about gut and uterine environment as a whole. So bacterial overgrowth, things like H. pylori, endometritis or BV, or other forms of dysbiosis, chronic low-grade inflammation, all can be parts of the puzzle for why conception has not happened. And the microbiome influences estrogen metabolism, immune tolerance, implantation, and sperm health. And this is rarely evaluated at all, let alone fully evaluated before IVF is being recommended. It's so important because small shifts can actually make the difference in this area of microbiome. And our microbiome is going to be passed down to baby. So that microbiome health that we currently have is going to be building your baby's immune system, and how easily or challenging it is for them to stay healthy and support their reproduction and their gut health, and so on and so forth. This prep time that you're considering taking time for is so impactful, not only for your overall health and your longevity, but for your baby's long-term health and longevity also. Okay. You're not wasting time by prepping. I need you to hear this really clearly. You're not wasting time by pausing and preparing, even if your AMH is low. Okay. I have a whole episode on AMH. So if you're worried about this number and a lot of fear and that ticking clock is being placed on you because of it's low, please know that natural conception has nothing to do with AMH. AMH is a clue of where to look deeper and learn more about why follicle development is happening at the pace that it is. I see AMH improve drastically all of the time in a 3 to 4 month time period. And it's only associated with how you're going to respond to stims in an IVF cycle. So that's why they're rushing you. IVF is there's still a high chance that it's not even necessary. So that's one very small piece of the puzzle that we need to not put as much weight around. But I'll link that show for further detail in the show notes also. And you're not wasting time, even if you're 37. If someone told you you're running out of time, MH reflects quantity, not equality. And equality is actually influenced by mitochondrial function, oxidative stress, nutrient sufficiency, blood sugar regulation, toxic burden, stress physiology, all things that we can change if we know that it's happening and we can have that plan to be able to target it and do so. Eggs take about 90 to 120 days to mature, and sperm takes about 74. So, really about that 90-day time frame is what you want to minimally use as your prep time. And the deeper dive investigation might guide you to a different timeline depending on what comes up with that. But you can dramatically shift biology in that window. And here's what's really beautiful. Even if you do choose to do IVF after your prep period, you go into it stronger with better egg quality, better sperm quality, better implantation rates, lower miscarriage risk, healthier pregnancy, and healthier babies after the first round. Okay. IVF clinics base their success rates on 3 rounds of IVF. We don't want you to do that if you have to go to IVF. We want 1 retrieval with beautifully healthy embryos being produced and 1 transfer. That is the goal. Preparation improves outcomes across the board, no matter how you're trying to conceive. The body needs to feel safe first. So remember that reproduction is not survival. It's not part of how our body functions in order to survive. It's optional from a biological perspective. If the body perceives chronic stress, inflammation, nutrient scarcity, toxic burden, metabolic instability, it will prioritize survival, okay? But when we remove barriers, when we support blood sugar stabilization, when inflammation drops, and when minerals are replenished in order to produce that energy that's necessary for reproduction, when gut infections are treated and sleep improves, when nervous system regulation improves, the body can actually redirect resources toward reproduction. Fertility is not just hormones, okay? So that surface level investigation gives us some data, but we have to look at fertility as a whole body activity. Okay. And I always get questions like, well, then how do drug addicts conceive? They're not healthy. Think of it as an air. Okay. That body is so stressed and overwhelmed that it doesn't know how to focus on survival. And it's like a genetic error that is occurring. Okay. But also comparison is not helpful for anybody. And we do have what are known as epigenetics. Our genetics determine how challenging it is or how easy it is for us to be able to conceive. And that can be traced back all the way to our grandmothers, because our mothers were in our grandmother's womb forming the egg that we were eventually to become. Right. And so what epigenetics is speaking to is our ability to turn on good genes that support reproduction and off not so good genes that don't support reproduction. And in doing this learning and uncovering these barriers of how your body can better support reproduction, you are improving epigenetic outcomes for your future tiny human, okay? Even though it's really challenging to be the one that has to wait and do all the things to improve your health in order to get that healthy baby, it's so, so worth it. And these cycles have to break somewhere. Please know that pausing is valuable. I've helped hundreds of couples take home healthy babies. My success rate is over 94%, with over 80% of these couples being labeled as unexplained. And the vast majority conceived naturally after taking this step back, even when they were told that IVF was their only option or their best next step. It's not because we forced anything. It's because we identified the barriers and we improved the egg quality. We improved the sperm quality. We improved the overall reproduction environment, and the body did what it was designed to do. IVF was still there if needed, but it wasn't the default, okay? So there are times that IVF does make sense when there's tubal blockage, when there's severe male factor infertility that's really not responsive to intervention, when genetic screening warrants the need for more selective choices around embryos. Advanced maternal age with limited time window can certainly play a role. So there is a time when the clock is playing a role. vast majority, it's not. But if we are going in our mid 40s, depending on when our mother started menopause, it can be something to think about. You can still take time to prep, right? But if your conception window is not happening within that, 4 to 6 month time period post prep, IVF might be the next step, and know that that prep period still is going to pay off drastically. All right. But even in these cases where IVF is appropriate, preparation, again, still matters so much. Going into IVF depleted and inflamed is only going to make that depletion and inflammation worse. And you're going to have to do more rounds of IVF. It's going to be more money, more exhaustion all around. That is going to take a longer time to baby. All right. So here are a few questions to ask before deciding whether IVF is the next step to be taking. Have we fully evaluated sperm health, including DNA fragmentation? Have we assessed inflammation markers like CRP? And just stepping back to the DNA fragmentation piece, we can change DNA fragmentation. So if DNA fragmentation is elevated, that's not a reason to go to IVF. That's a reason to pause and prep, because the quality of that sperm is going to impact IVF outcomes also. And when they are selecting sperm for fertilization in the lab, in the IVF lab, they cannot weed out what is DNA fragmented and what is not. So it's still going to impact embryo quality. And if fertilization is successful, it's going to impact risk of miscarriage and overall health of the pregnancy, as well as the lifelong health of the baby. So DNA fragmentation can be changed. Don't let anybody say otherwise. I have a full episode on this as well. We'll link in the show notes. Okay, so addressing inflammation like CRP. Have we evaluated insulin resistance beyond fasting glucose? Have we addressed iron regulation thoroughly? Have we evaluated for chronic infections? Have we optimized nutrient status? Have we supported mitochondrial health for at least 90 days? And has ovulation quality been truly assessed? If the answer is no to most of these, there's some more learning and investigation to do. All right. You deserve to have informed consent, because IVF is so expensive. It's physically demanding. It's emotionally intense. You deserve the time and the space and the answers. You deserve a plan that's going to work with your body to support reproduction, no matter how you end up conceiving. You shouldn't feel rushed, okay? Even if someone tells you that you're behind, you deserve a strategy that actually honors your biology, because again, it will help you hold your baby in your arms sooner. So IVF, in summary, should be a last resort tool, not a default. Your body's not broken. It may be very overwhelmed and inflamed, potentially undernourished or overcompensating, but that's not the same as incapable, okay? Taking a step back and asking why, learning how to investigate deeper, and working with your body. And whether you conceive naturally or through IVF, you will be stronger, your pregnancy will be healthier, and your baby will benefit for a lifetime. That is the goal, not just pregnancy, but thriving through motherhood, into motherhood, and having a resilient baby. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who feels pressured or rushed right now. And if you're ready to stop guessing and start strategically preparing your body for the healthiest possible pregnancy, reach out. You don't need to override your biology. You need to understand it. And I'd love to support you in doing so. Hope to see you here next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.